Thank you, Commissioner, Attorney General.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, senators, legislative staff.
Okay, and before you begin, Father Bradley, you're excused. You can go ahead. Okay, thank you.
Yes, again, good evening, Mr. Chairman, senators, legislative staff, and to those of you in the listening and viewing audience. My name is Claude Walker, and I am the Virgin Islands Attorney General. I'm honored to be here at the Chairman's invitation to offer a statement on Bill number 310348. Now, we've heard a lot of testimony over the last few days concerning the medicinal value of, the alleged medicinal value of marijuana. Our position continues to be that if there is a value, if there is a medical value to marijuana, let us have the Food and Drug Administration review and approve the use of this weed for specific purposes. That is not too much to ask for those of us who are skeptical about the medicinal value of marijuana. Let's go through the FDA process as all drugs do. After hearing many hours of testimony last Friday, I am even more convinced that if this bill passes, then it will be a complete and total disaster for the children of the Virgin Islands and possibly wipe out a generation of our children to marijuana use. All of the studies that have been conducted focusing on the effects of cannabis on adolescents have overwhelmingly concluded that the brains of children and teenagers are very sensitive to this drug, and that permanent and lasting damage may occur in adolescents who are exposed to cannabis. The advocates of medical marijuana appear to disregard those concerns, but we know from other jurisdictions that have allowed for the medicinal use of cannabis that marijuana usage by teenagers in those places have increased dramatically. I spoke to an attorney general from one of those states a few months ago during the time that this legislature was contemplating passing the hemp bill. And the attorney general told me to do everything possible to stop this type of legislation because the legalization of marijuana in her state is the biggest mistake that her state has ever made. She stated that teenagers in her state are receiving a mixed message from adults who assert that on one hand, that adults may use it for medicinal purposes, but on the other hand, teenagers must not because it's bad for them. So she went on to state that teenagers are responding to this message by saying essentially, you're right, you're using it, so why can't we? This bill will allow anyone to use marijuana for medicinal purposes in the Virgin Islands who demonstrates a need to a practitioner. And as I listened to the testimony on Friday, what struck me was that little was stated about the fact that this bill places no restrictions on the use of marijuana by persons in occupations requiring them to give total concentration to their job task because of the dangerousness associated with its performance. For instance, the U.S. Census Bureau tracks the most dangerous jobs in America, where the nature of the job requires sharp skills and a high level of concentration by the worker to avoid a fatality either to the worker or someone else relying on the worker to perform the task. These jobs include loggers who use chainsaws, and thus they could seriously cut themselves if inattentive. And they also work around fallen trees, so they must be alert at all times. An aircraft pilot is another similar occupation, which is common to the Virgin Islands. That's how we fly between St. Thomas and St. Croix on seaplanes and other types of crafts, in which the pilot is not only responsible for his life, but in the case of a 747 one-class airline, for example, this type of plane may hold up to 660 passengers, and all of the lives of these passengers are in the hand of the pilot. What about electrical power line installers at WAPA, for instance, and electricians working with high voltage electricity where one wrong move could cause electrocution to the worker? We also have roofers who work in very high places, and if not careful, they could fall. And police officers who are allowed to carry and use guns, and thus they must exercise good judgment and be in their right minds all of the time when they're on the job. Now, I have appeared before all of you on many occasions, all of you senators, and I believe that I may state confidently that none of you would want to sit on a plane with a pilot who has just taken a few puffs of a marijuana cigarette, or interact with a highly armed police officer who has just smoked some pot, even a few puffs, and now he has pulled you over. You would not even want your mechanic to change your tire if he has just taken a few puffs of marijuana, because he may not properly put back on your tire, and this could lead to either serious injury or death. You would not want your eye doctor or an ophthalmologist to perform delicate surgery, on your eyes if he has just smoked even a half of a marijuana cigarette, because you know that one wrong move by this eye doctor, either with a needle or a knife, could cause your blindness. However, under this bill, all of these workers in these occupations would legally be allowed to smoke marijuana and still perform the work, report for work, and perform the task that I have stated. Why are we doing this in the Virgin Islands? There's been a lot of talk about Colorado. The current governor of Colorado, John Hickenlooper, he stated, quote, "If I would have known, if I could wave a magic wand, I would reverse the election. This is a bad idea. I'll say it was reckless." He said this last year, 2015, unquote. That if I could wave a magic wand, I would reverse the election. This is a bad idea. I'll say it was reckless. September 2015, he made that statement. So in closing, I ask you to consider the children of the Virgin Islands, your children and grandchildren. Come on, we just had another murder a few days ago here in St. Thomas. Why would we leave this cursed weed known as marijuana as an inheritance to our descendants? What message are we sending to future Virgin Islanders? So I ask you, in fact, I beg you to reject this bill outright. Thank you, and I look forward to any question that you may have.
Thank you so much, Attorney General. We've had quite a long day, long night. We're going to take a very short break, a 15 minutes break, stretch your leg, and then we'll be back for a round of questions and to vote on the bill. This committee stands in recess for 15 minutes.